I am Kaylin. My parents didn't just lock me out of their home, they obliterated my existence, handed my legacy to my sister, and tried to steal the house I built to crown her their queen. But their ruthless betrayal only ignited a fire they couldn't extinguish, and I fought back with a truth that shattered their lies. This story doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with a key that no longer fit the door. What time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. I had barely stepped out of the rental car when I noticed it. No porch light. My parents had always kept it on for me, even when I came home late from college. But tonight the house sat dark and silent, like it wasn't expecting me. I tugged my rolling suitcase up the front steps and reached for my key. It slid in fine, but it didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I jiggled the knob, confused. Then I heard the deadbolt click from inside. The door creaked open halfway. My father stood there. His expression was blank. Not tired, not surprised, just blank. "Dad?" I asked, still trying to smile. "I just got back in from the outreach trip. I figured I'd crash here tonight like we talked about last month." He didn't move. "You can't stay here, Kaylin. You're not welcome anymore." His cold stare added, a silent dagger in my chest. I blinked. "What? There's no room." It wasn't even a pause, no hesitation, just those 3 words, like they were rehearsed. I laughed nervously. "What do you mean, no room? I've always stayed here after my trips. It's late and I'm exhausted." From the hallway, I heard heels clicking on the hardwood. Then she appeared. Vianna, my sister, wrapped in a lavender robe that looked like it cost more than my rent. She leaned against the staircase, sipping something from a martini glass. "The house is full," she said, barely glancing at me. "Full of what?" I asked. "Ghosts?" "You're the ghost now, Kaylin," her smirk taunted, her words slicing through my hope. Mom appeared behind Dad, arms crossed. She didn't even flinch. "Viona's fiancé is staying here and his service dog," she said. "The guest room and living room are taken." I tried to swallow the rising heat in my chest. "I can sleep on the couch like always." Viona gave a theatrical sigh. "The couch is for Baxter. He has anxiety when he doesn't have his space. You're less than a dog to us." Her eyes gleamed, her tone dripping with disdain. I looked past them into the home I spent years trying to keep together. The curtains were new, the chandelier had been cleaned, the floors shined. My work. Dad's hand began to close the door. "Wait," I said, forcing my voice steady. "This is still my home." His voice was calm, "You'll manage." "You're nothing to this family," his tone implied, a final rejection. Then the door shut. Not slammed, just shut. I stood there a long minute, the suitcase handle digging into my palm. Colorado nights in September aren't that cold, but I swear the air sliced me open anyway. Eventually, I drove. Not anywhere in particular, just away. I ended up at a roadside motel off the interstate, the kind with worn carpets and a clerk who didn't look up from his tablet. I paid with my emergency credit card, one I'd kept unused for years. The room reeked of bleach and something sweeter beneath it, like cheap cologne or forgotten dreams. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I'd given up my own apartment 4 years ago to help them. When Viona's art studio failed, guess who covered her debts? Who signed the second mortgage so she wouldn't lose her car? "Just until you get on your feet," I'd said like an idiot. They called me the reliable one, the fixer, the daughter who didn't make waves, and now I was disposable. "You're too trusting, Kaylin," a friend's warning from last year echoed, now a bitter truth. The next morning, I didn't plan to drive past the house. I told myself I was headed toward the highway, back to the city, back to my own quiet nothing. But the wheel turned anyway. Muscle memory. I slowed as I approached the driveway. That's when I saw it through the front window. My old room. Except it wasn't my room anymore. It was pristine. Black and silver furniture, soft lighting, suede pillows, arranged like a magazine shoot. There was a pour-over coffee maker on the side table and a framed print above the bed that read, "Dream, you belong here." Outside, Dad stood with our neighbor, Marla. He gestured proudly through the glass. "We just wanted Viana to have a space she deserves," he said, beaming. "You're erased, Kaylin." His pride in Viana screamed, a public betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't honk or yell or march up to the door like some drama scene in a cable movie. I just drove on, but my fingers gripped the keychain in my lap, the one that used to hang from the hook in that bedroom. It was a simple brass tag, worn down now. The engraving still read, "Welcome home, Kaylin." And for the first time, I realized it had never really been mine. She thought that was the end of the insult, but it was just the beginning. The motel curtains let in a dull gray light the next morning, slicing across my face like a warning. My back ached from the too soft mattress and my neck felt stiff from sleeping in an odd position. I sat up slowly, heart still heavy from the night before. I reached for my phone, half hoping there'd be a message from Mom, something apologetic, even cold, but soft enough to give me a thread to hold on to. Nothing. I refreshed. Nothing again. Out of habit, I opened the family group chat, or rather, I tried to. It wasn't there, not muted, not archived. Gone. At first I thought I'd tapped the wrong screen. I searched Family Hub. No results. I scrolled manually looking for old texts from Dad or Viana. All the history was still there, but the chat was gone. They had removed me, no explanation, no warning, just silence and deletion. "You're not one of us anymore," the blank screen taunted, a digital excommunication. I sat there staring at the blank space where our group used to be, the group I'd built from the ground up. Reminders for Grandma's appointments, updates on Dad's therapy, digital copies of Viona's meal plans for when Mom cooked. I managed that calendar like a second job. Out of instinct, I opened the shared calendar, the one labeled Family Rhythm, my name not on it anymore. It didn't even say removed by admin. It just didn't exist, like I'd never been a part of it, like I never sat in that hospital waiting room while Viana flew to Sedona to recharge. The ache in my chest was sharper than the crick in my back. I tapped on Nolan's name, Viana's fiancé. He'd always been a little spineless but polite at least. Maybe he'd give me some clarity. He answered after 3 rings. "Hey, Kaylin," he said, sounding hesitant. I could hear dishes clinking in the background. "Hey, I just noticed I'm no longer in the group chat and off the calendar," he exhaled. "Yeah, look, your mom said something about wanting less tension in the house. She said things were getting too complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. "Your burden, Kaylin," his tone implied, echoing Mom's dismissal. "You know," he said gently, "you tend to overstep sometimes. I think she just wants a simpler energy right now." Simpler energy, that's what they called being replaced. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just nodded even though he couldn't see me, murmured, "Got it," and hung up. "You're complicit, Nolan," I thought, his silence a betrayal as sharp as theirs. I lay back on the pillow, eyes tracing the water stain on the motel ceiling. It looked like a wilted star. Fitting. I stayed like that for a while. No tears, just a slow numbness settling under my skin like frost. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. A Facebook notification. Someone tagged me in a post. It was from Marla, the neighbor across the street. So good seeing the whole family again. Beautiful party as always. Attached was a photo taken in my parents' living room. The walls behind them bore glittering silver banners I had hand-cut 6 years ago for Dad's promotion. The happy birthday letters were the same ones, just rearranged. The cake, my signature lemonberry recipe with the signature lavender glaze. The caption read, "Viona's Autumn Bash." In the photo, Viona stood at the center, a crown of leaves on her head like she was forest royalty. Mom and Dad flanked her, beaming. Nolan held up a glass of sparkling water. I zoomed in and saw the guest sweetlights glowing through the hall. My room, my walls, my decorations, my recipe. No invite, no mention, just gone. "You stole my legacy," I whispered, the photo a knife twisting in my heart. I pressed the side of the phone into my chest, grounding myself with the coolness of the screen. And still nothing from them, not even a text. I opened my calendar to check something else, and there it was, a tiny notification. Kaylin's birthday, today. I stared at it. The time marker glowed quietly. 2 p.m. That used to mean something. We used to do lunch at Mom's. Viana used to post one of those filtered stories on Instagram. Happy birthday to the best big sister. This year, silence. Not a text, not a missed call, not even a passive-aggressive e-card. I turned off the phone. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the old leather notebook I carried for client notes. I flipped past scribbles about budget programs and counseling resources until I found a blank page. I stared at the empty sheet for a long time, and then with slow, deliberate strokes, I wrote one word in thick, dark ink. Enough. I didn't know what that would mean yet, not fully. But for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't theirs. It was mine. The word sat on the page, still silent, until something unexpected made it burn. 3 days later, I was standing under the metal awning of a run-down storage facility just off the highway. Rain tapped steadily on the tin roof like an impatient finger. I'd barely slept since the birthday party I hadn't been invited to, since the calendar reminder that reminded no one but me. My key stuck slightly in the lock, probably from rust, but I forced it open with a grunt. Cold air rushed out, musty with damp cardboard and forgotten linens. I stepped inside, water dripping from my coat, and turned on the bare bulb overhead. It flickered once, then held. Rows of boxes, mismatched and labeled in fading ink, surrounded me like a private archive of all the pieces of me they didn't want anymore. Holiday decorations, my college dissertation, even the baby blanket I crocheted for Viana's first dog before she upgraded to Baxter, the support animal with better living conditions than I had last week. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof I wasn't imagining it all, that I'd mattered, that I'd once belonged. One box near the back had warped from moisture. I pulled it forward gently, trying not to rip the soft cardboard. It was an old shoe box. Adidas from a pair I'd bought Dad for Father's Day 10 years ago. Inside, photos, a dried boutonniere from my college graduation, and at the bottom, a folded stack of papers. I unfolded them carefully, afraid they might tear. The top sheet was heavier stock, off-white, with the faint yellowing of time. It had my full name, my handwriting, my father's signature, a date in the top right corner. 7 years ago. It was an agreement, a formal acknowledgement that I had contributed $35,000 toward the house, specifically toward a partial down payment, property taxes, and repairs made during Grandma's final months. The wording was careful. My name was listed as co-contributor and vested stakeholder. The document had a second page, a draft. I realized one line had been crossed out. This agreement will reflect an updated co-ownership documentation. A note in my father's block handwriting read, "Discuss later." But later never came. "You lied to me," I whispered, the paper trembling in my hands, a betrayal in ink. My fingers tingled. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table with Mom the following year. She'd mentioned refinancing, just casually while stirring a pot of chili. "Can you sign this real quick?" she'd said. "It's for tax clarification. You know how messy these things get." I hadn't asked questions, I just signed. I was raised to believe that when your mother asks, you don't make her wait. And now I wasn't even on the deed. I dug my phone from my coat pocket, heart pounding harder than the rain outside. I tapped in Nora's number, an old friend from high school who now worked in the county title office. She answered after the second ring. "Kaylin. Wow, it's been a minute." "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Quick question. I'm trying to sort out some paperwork stuff about the house on Aspen Drive, my parents' place. Can you check who's listed on the deed?" A pause. "Sure, hold on." I waited, biting the inside of my cheek until the metallic taste of blood reminded me I was clenching too hard. Nora's voice returned, soft. "So, it's just your mom and dad. A quitclaim deed was filed. Looks like it was processed about 4 months ago." 4 months? I repeated. "Yeah," she said gently. "You okay?" Mimi stole my home, I thought. Nora's words a spark to my fury. I thanked her and hung up. 4 months ago, right around the time Mom had asked me to help proof the family Thanksgiving card wording, and Fiona had borrowed my printer for one last portfolio draft. 4 months ago, and they'd already decided I no longer existed in their plans. I sat down on an overturned crate, the shoebox on my lap. I didn't cry. I opened my old journal, one I hadn't seen in over a year. Near the back was a folded page I barely remembered writing. Unsent, unfinished, a letter. "Dear Mom and Dad," it began. "I know you're worried about Fiona and I want to help. I'll co-sign the rehab cost if it means she'll go this time. But I'd like to talk about how we all contribute and how that gets acknowledged." I never sent it. I remembered telling myself, "Don't stir the pot." That pot had boiled over a long time ago and I just kept cleaning the mess like it was my job. My fingers grazed something tucked beneath the journal. A napkin ring, crocheted, deep blue, shaped like a leaf. Thanksgiving, the first one we celebrated after moving into that house. I'd handmade 12 of them. My mother said they were charming but a bit rustic for guests. I held the leaf in my palm now, its yarn fibers brittle from time and age. It didn't match anything else in the box. I hadn't meant to save it, but maybe it had clung to the one thing that hadn't let go of me. I looked down at the document again. My name in blue ink, right beside my father's. Not a memory, proof. And just like that, the leaf crumbled in my palm, but something inside me stopped breaking. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't pour a glass of wine. I didn't even bother changing into pajamas. I sat cross-legged on the floor of my small rental apartment, a single lamp casting long shadows against the beige walls, and reread the old letters my father used to write me when I was in college. Most of them were short, casual check-ins. "We're proud of you, kiddo," signed in his blocky handwriting. I'd once kept them like trophies. Tonight they felt more like relics from a stranger, paper ghosts that didn't know what they'd become. I was halfway through one that still smelled faintly of his old aftershave when my phone buzzed. A notification from an old college friend, Lila. She'd tagged me in a comment. "Thought you'd be here tonight. Missed seeing you." My chest tightened. My thumb hovered over the screen, curious, hesitant. Then I tapped, and there it was, a carousel of photos. My childhood home. Warm light spilling through the bay windows, the front porch lined with lanterns and pumpkins. Inside, familiar faces crowded around the long dining table. That table was mine. I'd found it at a flea market and spent hours sanding it down, staining it by hand. I recognized the table runner too, the one I'd sewn from reclaimed fabric the year we couldn't afford store-bought decorations. Everyone was there. Fiona, of course, seated at the head of the table, the seat that had always been mine, right under the chandelier I helped install. My parents beaming, neighbors I hadn't seen in years. Even Uncle Theo, who'd sworn off family dinners until hell froze over. I kept scrolling, faster now. My heart didn't pound. It throbbed, a slow ache under my ribs. Each picture chipped away another piece. The ceramic dishes, my collection from thrift stores. The mason jar centerpiece I'd made one rainy afternoon, elbows deep in twine and hot glue. And then came the caption under a photo posted by one of Fiona's friends. "Huge thanks to Fiona's generous family for hosting us in their beautiful home." No mention of me. Not even a hint. In the next image, Nolan, Fiona's fiancé, stood with a glass of sparkling water raised, grinning. He wore one of Dad's old blazers like he belonged. Mom's comment underneath said, "So proud of what the kids are building here. It's becoming something special. Kids building here." I blinked hard, my stomach flipped. The next photo was the one that really did it. The napkin rings, the crocheted leaves, 12 of them arranged around the plates with perfect symmetry. My mother had once called them too homespun. Tonight they were labeled as heirloom pieces made by Mom. A lie, a beautiful polished lie for strangers to believe. "You stole my soul," I whispered, the photos a gallery of my erasure. I dropped the phone onto the rug, letting it slide beneath the coffee table. For a moment, I couldn't move. There it was, proof not only of exclusion, but of erasure. I stood up slowly and walked to the kitchen sink, ran cold water over my wrists, tried to ground myself. Then I returned to the folder with the draft of the title agreement, sat cross-legged again, the paper spread out on the floor. "They've erased me," I said aloud, not whispered, not mourned, stated. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, it had begun to drizzle again, soft rain ticking against the glass. I looked around at the moving boxes, still half-packed, the blank walls I hadn't bothered decorating. The room felt temporary, like I was just visiting someone else's life, no more. I stood, wiped my hands dry on my jeans, and walked over to my small desk, pulled out my laptop, and opened a folder labeled Family Finances. I hadn't touched it in months. It was time. One by one I began opening files. Bank transfers, scanned receipts, photos of the house during renovation, me with paint in my hair, grout under my nails. Emails with subject lines like appliance reimbursement and roofing invoice split. Then I opened a new folder, proof, dragged the files in, pulled screenshots from social media, Nolan being toasted, Mom's comment, the leaf napkins, captured them all. There was no grand plan yet, just a beginning, but it felt different this time. Not reaction, not emotion, resolve. They wanted to pretend I never existed in that house. Fine. But I had receipts, and I wasn't just keeping them for myself anymore. I didn't cry. I just started printing receipts. The quiet hum of the printer filled the living room as I watched page after page slide out, crisp with black ink and the weight of my silence. "You'll face your lies," I vowed, each page a step toward reckoning. I'd slept a few hours. Not much, but enough. When the sun came up over Denver, I already knew where I was going. The brunch was set for 11 a.m. Aunt Clara hosted it every other Sunday, rotating between quiches and cinnamon rolls. I hadn't been invited in over a year, not formally anyway, but I remembered the rhythm of their weekends better than they ever remembered me. By 10:15 IEM, I had my folder in the passenger seat and one hand steady on the wheel. The roads were empty, church traffic still tucked inside sanctuaries. The sky was overcast, the kind of quiet gray that made everything look like it had a filter over it. At 10:58 Ming, I turned onto her street. At 10:59 Ming, I cut the engine. By 11:01 Ming, I was walking up the steps. Inside, they were laughing. The kind of laughter that didn't pause to wonder who was missing. I didn't knock. I just pushed the door open. It swung inward slowly, as if even the hinges didn't expect me. Nolan was mid-sentence, talking about real estate investing. The room caught still, plates clinked, coffee poured, and then silence. My mother looked up first, then my father, then Viana. Not one of them said my name. Clara, from the kitchen island, blinked. "Did someone forget to lock the door?" she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're not welcome here, Kaylin," Fiona's glare hissed, her silence a public shunning. I didn't flinch. I walked to the dining table, my boots quiet on the tile. All eyes followed me as I pulled a thin manila folder from my bag and placed it in front of my father. He stared at it like it might bite. "I figured since no one's been picking up the phone," I said evenly, "you might need something in writing." He opened it slowly. One sheet, one stamp, one signature. The room tensed. "What is this?" he asked, but his voice was already laced with recognition. "A stop order," I replied, folding my arms. "An injunction halting any title activity on the Pine Street property, effective immediately." My mother's jaw clenched. "Kaylin, what on earth?" "I filed it Thursday," I continued. "Turns out, since my name was on the original tax documents and the financing agreement you signed in 2020, I have legal standing." "The quitclaim you filed without my knowledge? Invalid, at least until a judge says otherwise." "You're ruining the family's future," she snapped, rising from her chair. "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting my past." "You stole my home," I accused, my voice steady but raw. "But I'm taking it back. My father pushed the paper back toward me, not touching it. "We didn't want to hurt you. We just didn't think you'd understand the bigger picture. We were trying to build a legacy, something Viana could carry on." I looked at Viona then. She was playing with her spoon, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't even know they were doing this for me," she offered, all breathy guilt. "They never asked me. That's convenient," I said. "You're lying, Viana," I said, my voice cutting through her facade. "You orchestrated this." She finally looked up. "You always make things so heavy, Kaylin. Maybe that's why no one calls anymore." I smiled, not warmly. "If you're going to erase me," I said quietly, "at least do it legally. I won't let you sell the floor I built under your feet." "You'll choke on your deceit," I added, my voice a quiet vow of retribution. My mother scoffed. "You didn't build that house, sweetheart. You patched drywall." "After I paid for the contractors," I replied. "After I covered half the roof replacement. After I co-signed the emergency loan to keep the property from foreclosure while Viana was still painting landscapes and living off family credit cards." Viana stiffened. "I paid you back." "No, I said you didn't." And I stopped asking. The table remained frozen. Then finally a voice I hadn't expected. Uncle Silas, my father's brother. He sat near the end, never one to get involved. "She's right," he said, not looking at anyone in particular. "She paid for most of that house. I remember the checks, the quotes. Your dad bragged about it at poker night." My father shifted in his seat. My mother looked like she'd been slapped with wind. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak again. I simply turned around, walked back through the foyer, and let myself out. No yelling, no theatrics, just steps, even, steady. I reached my car and pulled the door closed behind me, sat in the driver's seat with my palms on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could just make out the silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Then I heard it through the crack in the window, soft and cruel. "She always ruins everything." Viana's voice. "You ruined yourself," I thought, her words fueling my resolve. I exhaled, not defeated, not broken, but bitter enough to understand something that had taken me years too long to say out loud. Maybe I never ruined anything. Maybe none of it was mine to begin with. She said, "I ruined everything, but it was never mine to begin with." The words stuck with me longer than I thought they would, long after I pulled out of Clara's driveway, long after I tossed the brunch invitation I never got. I thought I'd made peace with being the ghost at the edge of my own family, but ghosts don't get slandered in daylight. It was Tuesday morning when the next hit came. My phone buzzed as I finished reviewing blueprints for a nonprofit housing project. The voicemail icon blinked. I tapped it. "Hi, Kaylin, it's Greg. Listen, we've decided to pause the contract for now. Some concerns have come up. Rumors online. Nothing personal, just optics. Let's touch base in a few weeks." I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear long after the message ended. Rumors. I pulled up Chrome on my laptop and typed my name into the search bar. Second result down. Local developer under family dispute over fraudulent property claim. The article wasn't on a major site. It was buried in a free blog platform full of vague accusations and sensationalist phrases like embezzled inheritance, dishonest sibling, property dispute, cover-up. It referenced the Pine Street house, the injunction, and somehow twisted it to make me sound like a bitter, grasping relative trying to extort her own parents. There was no byline, no sourcing, just poison. Simon was the first person I called. "Can you trace the origin?" I asked. "Who posted this?" He was silent for a few beats, then let out a soft whistle. "I'll look into it." By noon, he'd found it. It's hidden behind a fake IP mask, but I ran a bounce check on the server path. The link rerouted through an assistant's laptop. Someone working part-time at a boutique marketing agency registered under the name Viona Designs. I didn't blink. "Send me a screenshot." An hour later, I was parked outside Viana's store. I watched as the front door locked from inside. Viana emerged in heels too high for sidewalk cracks, sunglasses on even though the clouds hadn't lifted. Her assistant walked behind her, phone in hand, nervously glancing at the sky. They didn't see me at first, not until I stepped out from behind the car. Viana slowed. "Kaylin?" I walked forward and held out the printed page. "Did you think I'd just roll over?" I asked, my voice low. She looked at the paper, but didn't reach for it. "What is this?" "The IPTHA posted the fake blog about me. It traces to your assistant's laptop." She tilted her head. "You're making assumptions." "I'm making facts," I said. "You tried to destroy my name," I accused, my voice sharp with fury. "But you'll pay for it." The assistant looked like she wanted to melt into the asphalt. "I didn't post anything," she blurted. "I never said you did," I replied calmly, then turned back to Viona. "But you gave access, and that's enough." "Kaylin, I think you're overreacting. It's just a blog." "If you come for my name again," I said, voice even but sharp, "I won't just defend it. I'll dismantle every lie you've ever built, Viona, carefully, quietly, and completely." "You'll regret crossing me," I added, my voice a chilling promise. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but I was already walking away. Back in my car, I let the silence settle again, let the pressure in my chest melt into resolve. That evening, I opened my laptop again. An email from Simon sat at the top of my inbox. Subject: "Sorry about Greg, but this might help." Inside, the formal termination contract, and beneath that, a short note. "Also, this guy named Marcus saw the article and called me. He thinks you handled it with class. He's looking to fund women's projects in the Rockies. I told him I'd pass along your info." I stared at the screen. It wasn't much, just a thread. But I'd followed threads before, mended them, stitched them into stronger seams. I clicked on Marcus's contact card and saved it. Then I reached for my folder, pulled out every document I'd gathered so far. Invoices, signed agreements, photos of renovation work I'd done with my own hands, texts from my father asking me to front the tax payment until things settled. And then I opened the deed again. Buried in the middle was a clause I'd forgotten. "In acknowledgement of co-builder contribution, the undersigned shall retain rights over any future sale or transference of property." I read it twice, then once more. They thought I'd forget. They thought I wouldn't know where to look. But I'd been in every corner of that house, painted every baseboard, replaced every fixture, buried every bitter feeling just to keep things standing. Not anymore. This wasn't about protecting what I built. It was about building something they could never touch. They came for my name. So I started writing a new one where they couldn't reach. I arrived at the Boulder County Courthouse just after sunrise. It was cooler than usual for Boulder. Gray sky, light breeze, the kind of weather that makes you question if a storm is coming, or if the air just wants you uneasy. I wasn't dressed to impress, slacks, a gray blouse, and flats. No makeup, no perfume, just clarity. I didn't come to beg for acknowledgement. I came for truth. Viona arrived 20 minutes late. She swept into the courtroom in nude heels, hair curled like she'd just stepped out of a fashion ad, flanked by my parents and a man in a navy suit I recognized as her lawyer from the injunction reply letter. They sat 2 rows ahead. I didn't move. The judge entered shortly after. A woman in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back, eyes sharp. She looked like she'd seen every kind of lie a family could cook up and was already tired of hearing ours. Viana's lawyer opened with a tone of practiced empathy. "Your Honor, this is at its heart a painful misunderstanding between 2 sisters. The property in question was never co-owned in a legal sense. It's an emotionally charged disagreement, unfortunate, yes, but not one that justifies injunction-level interference in a private family matter." He glanced back at me briefly, the way someone glances at a checkout clerk. I stood when prompted, calm. "Your Honor, may I submit evidence?" She nodded. I handed over a folder. Simple. No tabs, no highlighters, just clean, printed truth. Inside was a copy of the original blueprint for the Pine Street renovation. My signature, my notes in the margins, dated 7 years back. The judge flipped through it. "I see here foundational specs, appliance upgrades, load-bearing support adjustments," she said aloud. And I added, if you compare it to the layout Viona submitted with her permit last month, they match line for line. Viona shifted in her chair. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something. My father looked down at the table. My mother pressed her lips together so tight they vanished. Then I pulled the second sheet. And here, I continued, is the clause from the original contract between me and my father outlining my co-builder rights, including the right to reclaim interest in the case of displacement or fraudulent transfer. You built this house, the judge's glance seemed to affirm, a spark to my resolve. Silence. Real silence, the kind where air gets thick and heavy and no one wants to breathe first. The judge exhaled slowly, then nodded to the bailiff. Injunction holds. All sales and transfers are frozen until further notice. You've lost, Viona, my heart roared. The courtroom a battlefield won. Outside the courthouse, the humidity returned. I stepped into the sunlight, unsure if it was sweat or relief prickling down my back. Viona brushed past me at the top of the steps, not looking at me, just close enough for her perfume to hit. You really want to humiliate the whole family in public? She hissed. I didn't flinch. I'm not humiliating anyone, I said quietly but directly. I'm ending a lie. You'll never erase me again, I added, my voice a defiant vow. She walked faster after that. As I made my way to the car, a little girl with frizzy blonde curls and green sneakers stumbled near the bench ahead of me. Her toy, a stuffed bear, had a torn paw barely clinging to its body. It was wrapped in something soft, a fabric I hadn't seen in years. A napkin, white with a small stitched leaf in blue thread, the same kind Mom used to wrap my school lunches when I was 9. I bent down, smiled at the girl, and handed her bear back. She didn't thank me, just hugged it tighter and ran toward a woman balancing 2 iced teas and a diaper bag. It hit me. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing it because the little girl in me deserved to be remembered. And maybe, just maybe, so did the next one. Later that night, I sat at Simon's apartment reviewing next steps. The living room was cluttered. Blueprints, legal pads, empty teacups, but there was movement, not mess. I needed movement. He looked up from his laptop. They're going to try to settle, he said quietly. Probably offer a payout, some NDA boilerplate, rapid and emotional language about healing and moving on. I looked at him. Then we don't let them. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I nodded. They wanted this silent. They should have thought twice before erasing the only person who remembered everything. They'll face the truth, I vowed, my voice a beacon of defiance. It was just past 9 a.m. when the link dropped into my inbox. No subject line, no name, just a single emoji, a smirk. I clicked. Disgraced co-founder's mental instability may have led to her removal. The headline screamed. I sat still, not blinking, not breathing. The article cited an anonymous family source who described me as erratic, emotionally unfit to lead, and, most damning, obsessed with reclaiming a home she barely contributed to. The story was seeded into 3 local outlets, then syndicated to a gossip blog known for chewing women alive and spitting them out in the comments section. I scrolled to the bottom. Viona hadn't signed her name, but the style of the phrasing, the passive-aggressive spin about compassion fatigue and nurturing a fragile mind, it was her voice without the lipstick. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my attorney, Elise. Want me to call them off? This is libel. We can push for a quiet retraction if you'd rather settle. I closed the laptop lid, looked out the window. No, I said. I'm not here to be reasonable. I'm here to be remembered. They tried to break me, I thought, my resolve a blazing inferno. Elise paused. Then it's time. I nodded. Send the file. The file was named exactly what it was. When Dad forgot, I was in the room. It was a recording from a dinner 4 years ago. I'd stayed behind in the hallway after clearing the plates. They thought I had gone home. My phone had accidentally kept recording from my bag. In the clip, my father told Viona, "She's the builder, but you're the face. If we play this right, she'll walk away like she always does." My mother had laughed, Just tell her there's no room again. That sentence had been echoing in my head for weeks, but now it echoed across the internet. By nightfall, it was everywhere. The clip aired on a local news segment, picked up by a national podcast, and dissected frame by frame in X threads by legal bloggers and family therapists. I didn't respond to any of them. I let the clip speak. Within hours, sponsors pulled out of Fiona's upcoming art exhibition. Her studio paused operations for mental health reasons. My father's name, once pristine in local circles, was attached to the phrase asset reallocation scheme on every forum. You've lost everything, I thought, their empire crumbling under the weight of truth. By 11 p.m., I was in the neighborhood where I once lived, where I once paid the winter heating bill because Dad was covering Viano's therapy. I parked outside the house. No one was home. Porch light on. A lantern flickering near the stairs. I didn't knock. I walked in using the spare key I had never returned. The hallway still smelled like the citrus floor cleaner I used to dilute by half because Fiona thought it smelled too aggressive. In the kitchen, under the same flickering overhead light, I placed an envelope on the counter. Inside it was a voided check, $180,000, 0 cents, the amount I'd once loaned to my parents during their refinancing disaster, the one they'd promised they'd repay when the family business bounced back. They never did. I'd left a note attached to the check, written on the back of a napkin from that very kitchen drawer. It read, "This is the last check you'll ever cash in my name." I didn't slam the door on my way out. There was no rage left to throw. Just something heavier, quieter, final. The next morning, I walked into the empty gallery I'd rented downtown. The sunlight hit the far wall at an angle that painted the floor in gold. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and opened my laptop. Emails were still coming in, some supportive, some hateful, most curious, but I didn't open them yet. I opened my document folder, renamed a file, Chapter 1, How I Reclaimed My Name. Outside the window, people walked by holding coffee cups, dogs on leashes, their lives moving forward, like nothing cracked. But inside, I knew something had shifted. The victory wasn't a blazing triumph. It was a quiet, heavy reckoning. The gallery was mine, my name etched in brass out front, Kaylin Voss, founder, owner, artist. Above the door, in soft gold lettering, a sign read, "Yes, there's room here." But the weight of their betrayal lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I'd reclaimed my space, but the family I'd fought for was gone, not just in deeds, but in the trust that once held us. That evening, I opened the gallery for my show, Inheritance. No press, no invitations to them, just a quiet opening. People came, strangers, locals, a few who knew my story. They lingered at the broken wooden door, mended with gold resin, etched with my father's words. "She's the builder." But the placard read, "No room." A woman in her 60s, in a teal cardigan, stood there, her eyes tracing the etching. She turned to me. "They told me there was no room too," she said softly, "after I stopped paying their bills." I nodded. "What did you do?" She smiled, tired but unbroken. "I built my own." I met her gaze. So did I. We're survivors, I thought, her words a mirror to my own scars. After the last guest left, I sat in the back office with a mug of peppermint tea, the wind tapping the panes. The headlines had faded. Fiona's studio was faltering, and my parents' apologies were hollow, drowned in leaked emails exposing their greed. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't need to. The gallery was my truth, but the ache of their absence wasn't healed. It was carried, a quiet weight I'd learned to live with. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from those who raised us. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about reclaiming a voice, a space, and a peace that's imperfect, but yours. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your soul? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. If you believe in healing through truth and quiet strength, subscribe for more stories like this. "I am Kaylin," I whispered, my voice steady but heavy. "And I've made my own room,